This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good morning, everyone. So we continue in the Navi Hoshea, Agun Chodesh. We're in the middle of Parakeh, but I just had this feeling that there's something that we missed. And something that I saw this week triggered it. It was almost actually a Wednesday Shiur. And there's a pasuk in Hoshea, Daled, Daled. Okay, so even though we're in Parakeh, let's go back to Daled, Daled. It says, Ach ish, al yorev ve'al yoichach ish, v'amecha, and your people, kimarive kohen. Kimarive kohen. Says Rashi, your nation, look how bad they are. Not son in malfehain. They fight with their teachers. Shekohanim hayu b'nei hayra. The Kohanim were the teachers. Chumash nemar yoiru mishpatecha liYaakov. So v'amcha kimarive kohen means your nation fights with the Kohanim. Your nation fights with their leaders. The Radak brings another pshat. V'amcha kimarive kohen, that you're similar to Korach. How are you similar to Korach? Because he also contested against Aaron HaKohen. But there's another pshat in this pasuk. V'amcha kimarive kohen. That at the time I knew something was triggered, but I didn't have the exact citation. The Gemara in Kedushin says on Daf Ayin Amud Beis, very interesting, the Gemara. The Gemara says, if you see a kohen who's an azpanim, the Amar upligi de Rabbi Lazar, the Amar Rabbi Lazar, imroisa kohen ba'azus metzach. If you see a kohen who's audacious, who's chutzpahdik, al tahar achrav, don't have questions about his yichus. Why? Shenemar ve'amecha kimarive kohen. Your nation are like the quarrelsome Kohanim. Meaning, what's the Gemara saying? The Gemara is saying that Kohanim have a nature that they're hot-headed. Right. So in other words, if you see a Kohen who's a little hot-headed, so you might think, maybe he has bad yichus. No. He is a Kohen. It's right. Because he is a Kohen. The Gemara says, Amar Yehuda Amar Shmuel, Arba meos avadim, ve'amri la arbas alafim avadim, hayulay lefashchar ben Emar, v'kulam nitmu b'kahuna, v'chal koyin sheyesh v'yazus panim, eino ela mehem. So in other words, the Gemara, so good question, because on the other hand, you see Aaron is the oyev shalom v'roidev shalom. We're going to talk about that. Amar Abaye says, in all these avadim that got mixed into the kahuna, kulhu yasvan b'shuro de b'narda, they're all sitting on the wall of Neharda. So what does the Gemara seem to be saying? The Gemara seems to be saying that Kohanim have a audacious, hot-headed nature. That's the Gemara. That's the Gemara in Kedushin. The Gemara in Shabbos says on Kuf Mem Tes Amud Beis the same type of thing, that you would think that since va'amcha kamarive kohen, the Gemara quotes the same pasuk, Kuf Mem Beis Amud Beis. The Gemara says, I would have thought va'amcha kamarive kohen, kamash malon, Kuf Mem Tes Amud Beis, that I would have thought that since va'amcha kamarive kohen, here I'll quote to you the Gemara. The Gemara says, Am Rav Yaakov de Bas Yaakov, Avoloi al Hamono Shacha b'Yom Pshita, Mahu de Temahol Uksev Amcha K'Mei Kohen Afilu Manas Dechal Nami Kamash Malon. I would think you have to allow a certain heter for Kohanim to calm them down so that they don't fight. In other words, I might think Kohanim have a different halacha because they're so hot-headed. No, we don't give them a different halacha. One more Gemara. The Gemara in Bava Basra, Kuf Samach Amud Beis, says it was a place of Kohanim. They were hot-headed and they got divorced very often. Okay. They got divorced? Yeah, because they had a hard time getting along with other people. So how did they do that? Not the same person, obviously. Yeah. So that's why the Gittin by Kohanim, right? They had special folds in order to give an opportunity to the Kohanim to cool off. So the Maharsha explains. Why were Kohanim hot-headed? They have great yichus, and they are chashuv. So they feel, because of their chashivos, they can't be maver on their midos. In other words, the holier someone is, the more sensitive they are, the more perceptive they are to inadequacy and to infraction, and it bothers them more. In other words, you could have two people. One of them gets angry, the other one doesn't. The guy who got angry, he's not worse of a person. It could just be he's a holier person, so it bothers him more. You have two people, and they see somebody talking by davening. So it could. Now, one of them gets angry, the other one doesn't. It could be one of them is just more hot-headed than the other, or it could be one of them actually cares about davening and the other one doesn't care. So the Gemara says in Masechta Tainis, Hayt Surah Mirabonon, Derasach, a young Torah scholar that gets angry. Sometimes you see Tamei Chachamim, they have no tolerance. You ever see such a thing? Yeah. People, they can't tolerate anything. And you have some people, everything's okay. So you say a guy who, so you would think that Talmud Chacham, he's not good of a Baal Midas than the other person. No. The Gemara says, the Torah is making him angry. Says Rashi, that because he learns Torah, his systems are much more sensitive. He has more rachavas halev, and he has more harchavas hadas. So his mind is open more. He's more perceptive. In other words, the mashal is like this. You have a cleaning lady, or you have a household help. So what do you give them for lunch? Give them leftovers. It's fresh. It's not fresh, and to them it's delicious, right? And you give somebody a little bit of a mafunuk, that food, forget about it. The pshat is, the finer someone is, the more royal someone is, the more things bother them. That's why the Gemara says, if you see it's a Torah that's making him angry, and the Gemara says, he has to train himself to remain calm. But that's the point that the Marsha is saying. Now, I'll tell you something very interesting. The Gemara in Brachos, Daf Yud Zayin Amud Aleph. The Gemara says, Margala b'pumei da Abaye. Abaye would frequently say, Ma'anerach meishav chema. A soft tongue turns away anger. So the Ion Yaakov says, why did Abaye always say, Ma'anerach meishav chema? The answer is because Abaye was a kohen. And since he was a kohen, Kohanim are kavdonim. Kohanim have a temper. So he trained himself to say the pasuk, Ma'anerach meishav chema. So he trained himself to speak calmly in order to overcome his natural tendency. Or, Rabbi Elazar, after he finished davening, he would say the following, Yehiratzim ofanecha shetishgoin b'purenu ava achva v'shalom v'reyas. Rabbi Elazar would say, he would daven that in his vicinity there should always be peace. So the Berchas Aaron says, why? Because Rabbi Elazar was a kohen. And since he was a kohen, he was more quarrelsome and prone to anger than other people. So therefore, he would add a special tefillah to overcome his natural tendencies. By the way, in the Beis Hamikdash, the Mishmar HaYotzei would say to the Mishmar HaNichnas, Hu yishkoin beinechem ava v'achva v'shalom v'reyos. Why? Because Kohanim are quarrelsome, and they don't get along well with other people.
Levim also, or just the Kohanim?
Right now we're talking about Kohanim.
No, it's the same shade.
Right now we're saying Kohanim. Va'amcha k'mivei kohen. Maybe we could suggest the new Chiddush that all the Achronim ask, why in Berachos Kohanim do they say V'tzivanu l'varchas amcha Yisrael b'ahava? It's the only bracha that you add the word b'ahava to. Why? We don't say Hashem says on the tilas yadayim b'ahava l'haniach tefillin b'ahava. So why all of a sudden the Kohanim have to add ba'ava? The answer is this is the Berachos Kohanim is like the last thing the Kohanim want to do. When they get up there at the end of davening, after this guy didn't make the Misha Berach right, and that guy didn't get the right Aliyah, they're going to choke someone. So Yibam Hashem says, okay, let's just throw in the word ba'ava, calm down, give these guys a bracha, and try to, okay. It's very interesting. Fine. If you look in Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz, in the Yaros Tavash, in Drush Aleph, on page Chav Daled. This is coming from the Sefer Megadim Chadashim. I've been using it a lot lately. I almost used this for Wednesday, and I said, no, I don't want to talk about Kohanim, because there are too many Kohanim in my shul. But, what? Megadim Chadashim? It's a contemporary. He wrote it on Shas. His name is Rav David Yoel Weiss.
Oh, the vine.
Yeah, right? So, Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshit says like this. There's a klal, Saviv HaKedusha Yishalchu Rishaim. The wicked always surround Kedusha. Or, in other words, Tumah always surrounds Kedusha. That's the pshat when you wake up in the morning. So you wash Negel Vasa. Why? Because whenever the neshama leaves the body, it leaves a vacuum, so the kochas atumah come. So in the morning when the neshama comes back, the neshama drives out the tumah except by the fingers. So there's a shaila in halacha. We know that you're not allowed to handle food before you wash Negel Vasa. So you go to a store and you have goyim handling the food. Is that a problem? So the Shulchan Aruch Rav says no. Goyim don't become tamei because tumah comes from a vacuum of kedusha. But here,
isn't a goy tamei lechatchila?
No, their goys are tumah zav on goyim. Yeah, but we don't deal with tumah zav anymore. Tumah zav is not a problem for us. But listen to Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshit. He says there's another rule that tumah surrounds kedusha. Therefore, really, kohanim are good guys. In fact, kohanim are kedoshim. Kohanim are more kadosh than a regular person. In fact, there's a mitzvah that you give a kohen to speak first. You give a kohen to an aliyah first. You give a kohen to bench. Kohen has more kedusha. Because they have more kedusha, therefore the Yetzer Hara surrounds them more with anger and kapdanos and this type of thing. But really, Aaron HaKohen was Roidev Shalom, Ayev Shalom Roidev Shalom, but Bavnosin Arabim, it's Nepach HaKoil. Interesting, in the Sefer Oid Yosef Chai, the Ben Ish Chai in his drashos, he says that the nature of Kohanim is Lios Lahem Ma'at Kas. The nature of Kohanim is to have a little bit of anger. So exactly what does that mean? It's their nature to have a little bit of anger.
Because Stam Yid doesn't have any anger.
The Chasam Sofer, in the Chedush Chasam Sofer, Masechta Shabbos, on Daf Kuf Mem Tes Amud Beis, he says on this Gemara, Va'amcha Kamarive Koyen, he says, what does it say in Koheles? Yosef das, Yosef machayiv. The more you know, the more pain you have. Meaning, there's a concept. The more refined a person's mind is, the more things could bother them. You know, in other words, somebody goes into shul, oh, such a nice davening. But if you actually know the Shulchan Aruch, then this is a problem and that's the problem. This they did wrong and that they did wrong. Here, you have two people listening to Kriyas HaTorah. Oh, he did a great job. Yeah, because you have no clue what the trup is. You don't know what a melech is. You don't know what a shar is. You don't know what a shvana is, what a shvanach is, what a milel is. So everything sounds beautiful. If you actually know something, you see the guy has no clue what he's talking, how to lane. Right? So the more you know, the more painful things are. You know, you go to a shiur. Oh, good shiur. If he actually knows it, the guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Right? So Yosef das, Yosef machayiv. So the same thing with Kohanim. Says Chasam Sofer, Me oidsem kedushasam the Roidev Shalom. The reason why they're Roidev Shalom is not because they're peace lovers. It's because they're holier. The only thing is that also adds a degree of kapdanos to them. Comes the Chasam Sofer. Listen to this. This is what I was getting at. In the Torah Moshe and in the Drashas Chasam Sofer, page Kuf Ayin Gimel Amud Beis, and he writes what he calls B'derech Halatza. Humorously, truthfully, a little bit of both. You look in the Torah, and Aaron is what? Oyev Shalom, Roidev Shalom, no quarrels, no fights. Moshe, Vayicharaf, right? Shimuna, Moirim. Moshe is the one who's always getting angry. You know, not always, but a number of times we find. And Aaron is, I thought, V'amcha Kamrive Koyen. And here Aaron is the Kohen, and he's the Oyev Shalom. And Moshe is the Levi, and he's the one.
That's Inkas.
Says the Chassam Sofer as follows. Moshe Rabbeinu was supposed to be the Kohen, but he turned the job down. But he's still be'etzem the Kohen. So therefore, he was supposed to be. So he has the nature of the Kohen. He has the nature of v'amcha k'rim v'kohen. Aaron wasn't supposed to be the Kohen. Aaron was supposed to be the nice guy. So he maintained the midah of not being a Kohen. The Chassam Sofer says. So really, according to that, Kohanim are not oyev shalom, roidev shalom. Kohanim are, kapdonim. Like Pinchas. Pinchas is a real Kohen. Aaron wasn't a real Kohen. Okay, once we're on the topic, I'll tell you a gewaldige word from Rav Shach. Unbelievable word. So everybody knows that when Moshe Rabbeinu passed away, it says, what was the reaction of Klal Yisrael? They cried. Basically, in the newspapers, the reporter, Moses died, and some people were upset about it, right? But when Aaron died, it says Aaron died, and all Jewish people unite in crying. So Rashi says why? Because Moshe Rabbeinu, he was the rabbi. He sometimes had to tell them what to do, and he had his detractors, and he had his. But Aaron was the peacemaker. Aaron was oyev shalom. Everybody liked Aaron. So Reb Shach asked, this is the hesped we give Moshe Rabbeinu. Imagine, he's the greatest man who ever lived, and the Torah is recording his hesped. The Torah is writing, Moshe died, and some people were upset. Isn't it a busha v'chli? This is the hesped the Torah writes for Moshe Rabbeinu, that there were many. Moses died, and many people were sad. So, says Reb Shach, what is a hesped? What's the function? What's the purpose of a hesped? Hesped is, you declare that the person fulfilled their tafkid. That's what a hesped is. The purpose of a hesped is to publicize that the person fulfilled their role in this world. Everybody has different roles. Some people's role is the role of Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu is the leader. What is the role of the leader? To teach, to love, to rebuke, to instruct, to guide. If the Torah would have said about Moshe, everybody cried, that basically what the Torah is saying is, he did not fulfill his job in this world. His job was to be a Moshe Rabbeinu. Therefore, the best hesped the Torah could give was, many people were upset. Meaning most people, they know what's right, they know what the correct thing is, and therefore, despite the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu sometimes had to tell it as it was, many were upset. And how could we say definitively that he fulfilled his role in this world? Many people were upset, and some people were not. But Aaron HaKohen's role was the Oyev Shalom, the Roidev Shalom. And therefore, his job in this world was to, make people feel good. And the Torah gives him his hesped. His hesped was, everybody was sad. We're not saying that Aaron was better than Moshe. The Torah is merely stating the eulogy that Rivan Shem wants to be recorded about these two individuals, that Moshe Rabbeinu fulfilled his role as Maneg Yisrael, and Aaron HaKohen fulfilled his role. There is an amazing Rashi in Parshas Pinchas.
As a mining, it wasn't up to the enter into Israel. Isn't that a bit of a failure as a mining? If he had fulfilled his role as a mining, wouldn't he have led Bnei Israel over Yidin?
I'll tell you a story. So, in Warsaw, there were 3 great Gedolim.
3?
Great Gedolim.
Oh, 3 people.
Menachem Zemba, Hashem Yimkom Damai. Rav Shapiro, very good. Rav Avram Kahana Shapiro. Number 3 is Rav Shimshon Stakhammer. And the Aguda, during the war, had an opportunity and offered them the opportunity to come to America. And they deliberated, what's the right thing to do? Should they save their skin or stay with the people? So this they considered dinei nefashos. And this story, Rabbi Zon, Rabbi Chanan Zon, told me yesterday. He's the head of the Chevra Kadisha in America. Because he told me he heard the Tisha B'Av shir from last year. I spoke about Rav Shimon Stakhammer and Rav Shapiro. his wife was close with this Rabbi Avram Kahana Shapiro. So they deliberated. So it's Dinei Nefashos. Dinei Nefashos, you start from the least. So Rav Kahana Shapiro was the youngest, and he first offered his opinion. And his opinion was, what do you mean save our life? And leave the people, kitsoin asher ein lohem roya. Leave the people like a sheep that does not have a shepherd. And he said, we can't go. And they turned to Rav Menachem Zemba and Rav Shimshon Stackhammer, and they didn't say anything. And they concluded, like the psak of Rav Kahana Shapiro, that they can't go. Why? Because they're the leaders. The leaders can't forsake the people. So, here's the thing. Even though Moshe Rabbeinu did not make it into Eretz Yisrael, but guess who else did not make it into Eretz Yisrael? The rest of Klal Yisrael. The Yotzei Mitzrayim. And we have a tradition, Ubohu ha'ovdim be'eretz Ashur, v'hanidachim be'eretz Mitzrayim. Who are the nidachim be'eretz Mitzrayim? Klal Yisrael, who didn't make it out. And we have a tradition, Rabbeinu Bechai says, that when Mashiach comes, we're going to travel through the Midbar and travel through the Yam Suf and travel into Eretz Yisrael. Who's going to travel? The people who didn't do it the first time. And who's going to lead them? Moshe, the Or HaChaim HaKadosh says, Ma shehaya hu she'yiyah. Ma shehaya hu is Moshe. Moshe will lead them. So yes, Moshe Rabbeinu did not make it into Eretz Yisrael, but in a way, as the Raya Mehemna, as the faithful shepherd of Klal Yisrael, he said, if they ain't going in, then I'm with them.
He wanted to. Kodesh Baruch Hu said, stop, don't ask me anymore.
But the Hashgacha had it that, the Midas HaChesed of the Rebbeinu Shalom understood that Moshe's role as the Raya Mehemna needed to be complete. Yeah. So I'll say a story. My grandmother is Nizar Fur Shalema, Sina Basena Rasha. So her father was the last Rav of Sachachav, and he also had an opportunity to come to America. Supposedly, they were going to make him a position, Chief Rabbi of America, whatever that means. That's the story. And he wouldn't go. He didn't go. He was killed in the Warsaw Ghetto. He's a young man. And he told my grandmother to, basically continue the chain. And he sent her out. If I'm not mistaken, it was 40 kilometers.
What was 40 kilometers?
Sachachav from Warsaw, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, Rashi and Pinchas. You ready for this? This is a good one. Rashi and Pinchas says like this. Rashi says, Vayimasru me'alfa Yisrael. Rashi says, it's an impossible Rashi to understand. Rashi in Parshas Pinchas says the Heilige Rashi. Excuse me, Rashi in Matos. Vayimasru me'alfa Yisrael. Nikoim nikmas me'yisrael me'yisrael me'jan ha'shal ha'zay. Dar Moshe al'am le'mar chotz me'yitcham. Vayimasru me'alfa Yisrael. Says Rashi, L'hoidiacha shivchan shal royei Yisrael. To show you how much the Jewish people love their shepherds. Kamahim chavivim al Yisrael. Ad shaloi shamu b'misasai mahu oimer. Before they heard about Moshe's death, what does it say? Oid ma'adus goluni. They're going to stone him to death. When they found out that as soon as they take revenge against Midian, Moshe is going to die, they didn't want to fight the war until they were taken against their will. So there is one statement here in Rashi that doesn't belong. You know the game, one of these things doesn't belong here? So right, Rashi is saying, look how much the Jewish people love Moshe. So I would say, because now that they heard that Moshe's death is dependent on taking revenge against Midian, they didn't want to go take revenge against Midian. But Rashi injects not only a non sequitur, not only something random, something against the whole premise of Rashi. Rashi injects, until they heard about Moshe's Patira, what does it say? They wanted to stone him to death. And now all of a sudden that they heard that Moshe Rabbeinu was going to die, they didn't want to do it. So if anything, that demonstrates that they don't like him. Why would Rashi throw in, look how much the Jewish people love Moshe? Why? Don't talk about the fact that until this day they wanted to stone him to death. Why does Rashi throw that in? Say it somewhere else. In the Rashi that talks about how much they loved Moshe Rabbeinu, Rashi has to throw in. Rashi doesn't say anywhere else they wanted to stone him to death. Why Dafka now? The Torah telling me that they wanted to stone him to death. So a long time ago, I heard from a Rashiva, Rav Akiva Grumblat Shlita. He said Rashi is saying 2 points. Rashi is saying, look how much the Jewish people love, not Moshe, the leaders of Klal Yisrael. So now we need to demonstrate 2 things. We need to demonstrate that they love him, and we need to demonstrate that he's a leader. So the first thing Rashi demonstrates is that Moshe was the leader. How do we know that Moshe was the leader of Klal Yisrael? Because they wanted to stone him to death. We've demonstrated that he's the leader. Now that we demonstrate he's the leader, now will demonstrate that they love him, because they didn't want to go because they knew he would die. But if they didn't want to stone him to death, then he's not a leader, then he's just a puppet, he's a figurehead. A leader is someone who the people want to stone to death, but they can't. They don't. That's what Pshat Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu is, Ratzoi l'roi v'echav. Okay. So v'amcha k'merive kohen. So 3 pshatim in v'amcha k'merive kohen. Either the people, they fight with the Kohanim, or they're like Korach who started up with the Kahuna, or v'amcha k'merive, the people are quarrelsome as is the midah of Kohanim. See both, right. Okay. So let's continue. Parakeh. Pasuk Yud Gimel. Parakeh Pasuk Yud Gimel. Vayar Ephraim es cholia. Ephraim saw his illness. Yehuda es mezorai. Yehuda saw his chayli. So Rashi says lashon chayli. So we have to determine what's the difference between a chayli and a mazar. Vayelech Ephraim al Ashur. Ephraim went to Ashur. That refers to Hoshea ben Elah. Shahayaloi le'eved. V'yashav v'yimroid, Rashi says he rebelled. Vayishlach al melech Yarev. Yehuda sent to the king of Yarev. That refers to Achaz, who gave bribery to Tiglath-Pileser to help him against Ritzin, the king of Aram, and Pekach ben Remaliah. V'lo yuchal lerpoi lachem. He will not be able to heal you. V'lo yiga mikem mazar. And he will not be able to remove your sickness. Says Rashi, V'lo yuchal lerpoi lachem. Meharbe, he will not be able to heal you. Meharbe gedudim miplishtim va'arbiyim. From all the bands of the Philistines and the Arabs, Shabo al Achaz, that they came on Achaz, Kamosh Mefurash, B'divrei Hayamim, as it's explained in Divrei Hayamim, Ki chalak Achaz es beis Hashem. Achaz divided the house of Hashem, Vayitin l'melech Ashur, and he gave it to the king of Ashur, V'loi le'ezrolai, and it did not help him. What? Doesn't help. V'lo yiga mikem mazar, lo yasser mikem achav. It did not remove the pain. V'omer ani, says Rashi, it's my opinion. Shehu min hatevois hafuchais lashon. That it's one of the words that are of opposite languages. Ka'asher hoiga min hamasila. Hayru v'hoigu milev. Hoiga yisiga mikesef. What does this mean? I believe what Rashi means is there are words in Hebrew that are tevos ha'hafuchais. What does it mean, tevos ha'hafuchais? Where the word can mean one thing or it can mean the complete opposite. Like shoresh could mean a root, or lesharesh could mean to uproot. So there are words in Hebrew that either mean one thing or they mean the exact opposite of that thing. There's certain words that, basically they turn on a dime. So Rashi says the word hoiga, v'la yiga, could either mean to remove, or it could mean the exact opposite, which would then mean to put in. Hago, right, to add in a... Right, good. Let's see the Metzudas David. On Yud Gimel, Va'yar Ephraim, V'chasha yira Ephraim bizmanoi. When Ephraim saw in his time, as choyli tsaroisav, the illness of his tsar, V'huda bizmanoi makas machayvai. So Ephraim went, Hoshea ben Elah sent a message to the Melech Ashur to be an Eved. And Vayishlach al Yehuda, Achaz sent to King Ashur for help. Basically, both Ephraim and Yehuda sent a message to align themselves with Ashur. Ephraim was a servant of Ashur. Yehuda solicited their help. And the truth is, so according to Rashi and Metzudas, Melech Yarev is Achaz. But Ashur offers no help. La yuchal lehi rafe, v'la yigeh. So now let's look at the Malbim. This is an interesting thing. If the word mazar and chayli both mean illness, so what's the difference between the two of them? So I have mehara. Maybe there's a... Yeah? Mehara. Look in the Malbim on the word chalyoy mezairai. Chalyoy mezairai. Shem mazar, the Malbim says, ba, al zriyas avak samamanim sheyizru al hamakash al aguf. Kamay loy zairu. Zairu is usually an elixir, a medicine, some kind of powder of dust that you spread on a makkah. Therefore, ein done dincha lemazar. So the question is, but here it means an illness, and like we say in the Haftarah on Tisha B'Av, on Shabbos Chazan, Lai zahiru v'lai rukacha, Lai zar v'lai chubashu v'lai rukacha b'hasham. So there it means some kind of medication. So why here does it mean an illness? The answer is, since it's a medication that you put on the outside of a wound, it could also be a reference to the wound itself. Also, it's called a mazar. An outer wound could be called a mazar because you squeeze it to remove the pus. Like the pasuk in Shoftim, Vayizar es hagaza. V'hachoyli penimis, and the illness is on the inside. And it needs... Okay, so the difference between basically... The word mazar could either mean a medication or it could mean an external wound. So mazar is an external wound. Chayli is an internal wound. And it needs refuah by drinking the medication or some kind of herb.
But why does Yehuda have an external wound and Ephraim is internal? What's the difference there? What was the difference?
Why is Ephraim's considered... Mm-hmm. Why is Ephraim's considered internal? Mm-hmm. Here, we're going to see in the Malbim, okay? So now that we've established that one is internal, one's external, we have to see how that applies to Ephraim and Yehuda. Good question. Now, back to Rashi. Rashi said the word mazor. So now the word mazar is also a word which is mishapech, because it says v'lo yigamikem mazar. The medication will not be removed. So for the chayli, you need a refuah, and for the mazar, you need a mazar. For the external wound, you need something on the outside. That's why the Malbim says, "Al ze'omer neged hachayli v'lo yichal l'rpay lachem, and neged hamazar yigamei mazar." So let's look in the Malbim proper. that he says there's a hevdo again between a chayli and a mazar. Chayli comes from the inside, and mazar comes from mak on the outside. Ephraim sent to the king of Ashur that Ashur should strengthen Ephraim's melucha against the insurrection that was coming internally. So Ephraim has an internal sickness. How's that? There was internal rebellion, so Ephraim turns to Ashur to squelch the internal rebellion. That's where they're a chayla. They have internal rebellion. Yehuda sent to him that they should save him. Yehuda wanted Ashur to save them from invading armies. So that's like an external illness. So according to the Malbim, you see the precise terminologies are used. That Ephraim had internal rebellion, therefore Ephraim's problem is called a chayli. Yehuda had an external problem. So Ephraim went to Ashur, and
Ephraim wanted to be his Eved. Yehuda only wanted assistance.
Eved meaning we'll be subservient to you as long as you give us some kind of tranquility from what's taking place from within. The Malbim says, "Vayelech Ephraim el Ashur sheyashgid hamered hapnimi v'yirapa hachayli," and therefore Yehuda just sent to Melech Yorev. He sent shluchim to Melech Ashur. Why is he called Shalach al Melech Yorev? It was Achaz. Why is he called Melech Yorev? Meaning, he sent messengers to the king of Ashur, Sheyorev esriboy, that he should fight his battle against Pekach and against Ritzin. External forces, right. But neither of them were successful. When Ephraim went to get cured from the inside, no, v'hu lo yuchal l'rapei lachem. Like it says by Menachem ben Gadi, v'lo amad sham ba'aretz. And it says by Achaz, vayitzer loy v'lo chizkai. So, the what? So so they were not able to get help from Ashur to subdue that internal insurrection. Okay, Rabbi, so we did one pasuk today. Baruch Hashem. Have a great day. No, but we were able to do some interesting ma'amakomis on va'amcha kamarivei kohen.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.